even in the winter, there can be good wild food around. Anytime the ground is not frozen, some plants are out there growing somewhere. One of my own personal foraging challenges that I do every year is to try to make a wild salad for New Year's Eve. Here in Oregon's Willamette Valley, it can get below 0 degrees Fahrenheit and the ground can stay frozen for a while. But so far this winter, the weather's been mild and the ground has not been frozen too much. I found 16 different weeds that occur in many parts of North America and in other parts of the world too. I'm Holly Chris. Welcome to Haphazard Homestead. I'm glad you're here. I hope you can find some of these plants around your area, either this winter or as winter moves into spring. The first plant is cat's ear. You may know it as flatweed or false dandelion. It's a perennial, so the roots are ready to support new green growth anytime there's a few days of mild weather. This is yellow archangel, also called yellow deadnettle. It's an ornamental ground cover used in landscaping that's become an invasive weed. The older leaves are no good for eating, but the tender new growth is nice in a salad. I just found one sprig, but there will be plenty more in the spring. Here's a weed I can use like microgreens. Even when it's just getting its first true leaves, it's sticky like it is when it's older. It's cleavers or bedstraw. Its seeds sprout so quickly when there's a break in the winter weather, and it comes up so thick that it's efficient to pick. The same goes for this weed, nipplewort. It may seem like nipplewort or cleavers or other annual weeds are too small to identify accurately when they're just sprouted like this, but it is possible to tell them apart if you look close and get to know them well. No matter which weeds you're picking, as always, it's really helpful to pick clean and pick organized. Weed number 5 is narrow leaf plantain. I like their mushroom flavor. It's a perennial that can handle rough weather, but the ragged leaves can get tough. I'm looking for the newest, most tender leaves in the center of the plants. Here's a patch of ground with 3 different annual edible weeds. Can you see any of them? Like these here, or this one, or this one? These are immature purple deadnettle. Even at this young stage, they have that gangly growth form and the square stem of all the plants in the mint family. Older plants that are in flower are definitely more noticeable and distinctive than the little seedlings. But once you start to key in on purple deadnettle, I think you'll be surprised how much of it is out there even in the winter and early spring. This next plant takes some special attention. It's borage. I read too many medical cases where folks, especially gardeners, get young borage plants mixed up with the poisonous foxglove. Weed number 10 here is one of my most favorite wild spring greens. It's the common sow thistle. They're an annual plant and they often sprout in the cool fall weather and can grow all through the winter. So there can be some raggedy leaves that need to be trimmed off before you take the good ones back to the kitchen. Weed 11 is lemon balm. People pay good money for seeds or plants of this perennial herb in the mint family, but it's even more of a survivor than other mints like spearmint, so it's become a widespread weed that's actually considered invasive in a lot of places. Here's a patch of 2 different annual weeds that grow well in mild winter weather. The bigger one is hedge mustard. I've got a video about hedge mustard that I'll put a link to in the comments down below. When it's this size, it's a good balancer for stronger flavored greens. The rest of this patch is such a classic wild plant for salads. It's chickweed. It's nice to find a dense patch for efficient picking, but it's still important to check that there's nothing else mixed in with a handful of plants. Here's a plant with a nice lemon flavor in those new leaves coming out of the center of the rosette. It's curly dock, also called yellow dock. The new leaves are still rolled up and will have the strongest lemon flavor. These are deep-rooted perennial plants that will keep sending up new leaves whenever the weather's warm enough, and then all through the spring. The papery sheaths and the gooey juice around the rolled-up leaves are characteristic of the curly dock. I was surprised to find this common mallow still around. They usually freeze back around here. This plant looks like it was left over from the summer and just keeps putting on new growth because the weather's been so mild. And that new growth is the part I'm interested in. it will be tender enough for a salad. Over here by the grand fir, there's a little wild field mustard plant. It must have sprouted in the fall. It's crazy to think that it's flowering here at the end of December, but there it is, and it's in great shape for eating too. Here are some wild field mustard that are more typical. They're still focused on growing their leaves and haven't started to flower. Weed 17 here is going to provide some great flavor into my wild salad. It's wild chives. Now botanically, they're really a wild garlic, but the original bulb underground has split and split again over the years into a tight cluster of perennial plants. In the winter and early spring, their tops are just like chives. And here's such an excellent plant for a wild salad, nestled into this pile of old leaves. It's a dandelion, sure, but look at how those fallen leaves have blanched the stems of the dandelion. Those blanched dandelion leaves are going to be so good in a salad. And look at how many individual clusters of leaves are coming out of that single perennial taproot. That shows how a dandelion can be cut over and over again and will keep putting out leaves and more food for years. I'm sure that I've cut this specific dandelion so many times over the years. I think that's a good collection of plants for a wild salad. If you come back with me into the kitchen now, you'll be able to see these plants close up. You'll get some tips on putting together a great tasting wild salad, and you'll see what I put on top of my salad. I don't think you'll be able to guess. Back in the kitchen, you can see why I like to stress that it's good to pick organized. I like to take each group of plants and put them in their own little pile on the counter. It's easier for our eyes and our brains to review one pile of plants at a time to see whether there's any debris like twigs or plants that we don't want in there, or if there's plant parts that are poor quality and need to be removed. If you're learning a new kind of plant, it's a lot easier to review its identification in its own little pile rather than in a jumbled mess of green leaves with a lot of other kinds of plants. Speaking of identification, let's do a quick flyover and see which plants you recognize. That's the dandelion, and that's the wild field mustard with the base leaves that look different from the leaves on the long flower stalk. There's the wild chives and the purple dead-nettle. That purple dead-nettle isn't very purple. Oh, and look, there's a lemon balm in the purple dead-nettle pile. See how it's easy to recognize when you're not trying to sift through a whole mess of leaves? Here's the common mallow. There's the narrow-leaf plantain. There's the common sow thistle. When it's the middle of spring, those sow thistle leaves will be so much bigger. Here's the galeum, the cleavers, goosegrass, bedstraw. It has a lot of names. Even at this young stage, it's all clingy, but it's important to go through it to make sure there's no debris and all the plants are good quality. Here's the curly dock and its lemon-flavored leaves. There's the hedge mustard. Now there's where the lemon balm pile is. It looks a sort of metallic this time of year. That's the cat's ear. You can see that I have the roots still left on it. And look, the yellow dead-nettle was mixed up in that pile. Even though it's just one set of leaves, it should go in its own spot on the counter. It just helps keep everything organized so we can clearly see if we've got a wrong plant. Here's the borage, and there's the nipplewort, and there is the chickweed. Can you see the difference between the chickweed and the galeum or cleavers? Even though these plants are young, I think they're pretty distinctive if you look close. You can also see why I like to stress that it's good to pick clean. Look at these cat's ears. When I picked these cat's ears, I left the roots on because I wanted to do some experiments with trying to re-sprout those roots in the house. But you can see how much dirt comes along with that. It's so much easier to do all the trimming out in the field than try to deal with all that dirt and debris back in the kitchen, especially if you're looking at a lot of different kinds of plants. Now you may say, hey, why do you bother picking such a small amount of some of these plants? Well, I think each kind of plants adds to the flavor of the overall salad. And when you have a lot of little piles of different plants, all together you can make a good-sized salad. Once I get the cat's ears cleaned up, I don't have to do too much extra processing for the rest of the plants. That's because I did a good job of picking clean out in the field. I do have to spend extra time with the dandelions. I have to trim the leaves off of the crown of the plants where they attach to the roots. I have to go through and check for poor quality leaves in each clump. And you can see how there's some dirt from where the dandelions were nestled down into that pile of fallen leaves. Because these dandelions are so dirty, I'm going to clean them separately. I let them soak about 15 minutes in a big bowl of water that loosens up all that attached dirt. I soak the rest of the plants in a different pan of water, rinse them off, and let them drip dry in a colander and then on a towel. Once the dandelions have been all cleaned, we're ready to go in building the salad. I think one of the keys to making a great wild salad is chopping all the leaves into tiny pieces. It really helps mix all the flavors of the different plants. I'm going to top my salad with a variety of things. I'm going to start off with some pickled buds of yucca flowers that I made this summer. Then I'm slicing up some tomatoes that I harvested from my garden in the fall. They were green, and over the winter they've slowly ripened up. I'm not saying they're as good as summertime tomatoes, but they're better than anything from a store. I'm going to peel and slice some tubers from Jerusalem artichokes that I have in the garden too. And I have some oil black sunflower seeds that I harvested from my garden in the fall. I'm not saying my way of cracking the sunflower seeds is the best. If you know of a more efficient way to do it, let me know down in the comments below. I'd like to know. I finished my salad off with a simple dressing of balsamic vinegar and oil, and that's pretty much it. Just add some crackers. Now there's a salad. I think that's pretty good for the last day of the year. For my New Year's Eve drink, I'm having a Black Locust cocktail. I just made a video about how to make the Black Locust gin that I use in that. I'll put the link to it down in the comments below. Now let's get a live taste review and find out how good that salad was. That was so good. You may think that because I could make such a great winter salad on December 31st, that foraging must be easy here in the Willamette Valley all winter long. Well, not always. Stay tuned for my next video when I make another wild salad after we've had a big snowstorm. I hope things are going well at your place. Thanks for watching. Bye!